Oh, hi. I'm the old principal, and I was just smelling the flowers. Now, these flowers didn't have much smell, but in lesson 72, we talked about smelling the flowers. Now, here we are in lesson 75. Lesson 75 is passing steamboat. If you can check out this picture, this is a picture of a steamboat from a long, long time ago. Passing steamboat. Passing means 要过去的 steamboat. Okay, what is a steamboat? Okay, 蒸汽 is steam, 蒸汽, and its engine, 它的机器是用蒸汽. So, and a boat, of course, is a 船. Okay, so 蒸汽机船. Whoa, that sounds like a big word, doesn't it? Okay, Mrs. A, you want to come here and read this story? I think you'll do a better job here than I'm with the Chinese. Go for it.
Okay. A group of people were standing on a rickety old wooden dock along a river's edge, waiting for a big boat to pass. They weren't there because they wanted to get on the boat, for it almost never stopped at this little town. They just liked to see the majestic steamer glide down the river with its giant paddle wheels churning up the water on either side of the boat, and the clanking sound of the engine's pistons, and the black smoke that belched up out of the smokestacks on either side of the boat. Presently, a little boy came running out onto the dock. He forced his way through the group until he stood on the leading edge of the tiny wharf. Everybody smiled at his childish ways, but they noticed that he carried a red flag, and they wondered what it was all about. As the steamboat came around the bend in the river, its bow pointing directly at the group, the little boy started to wave his flag furiously. A skeptical man standing on one end of the dock laughed at the lad. "Oh, surely you don't expect a big boat like that to stop at this place for a little child like you?" The boy replied with confidence, "I know it will. It always stops for me." Suddenly, the big boat slowed its pace and began to turn toward the shore. The people said, "Oh," and "Ah," at the sight. Before long, the riverboat pulled alongside the little dock, and one of the sailors lowered the gangplank so that its free end rested on the dock. As the little fellow walked up the gangplank to go on board, he stopped and turned around. He spoke to the surprised man and said, "I knew this boat would stop for me because the captain is my daddy."
That's a great little story. Thanks so much. Okay, maybe we can get you to come back here and give your take on this after a while. Okay, this is number 75, passing steamboat. Okay, so let's begin by looking at a group of people who are standing on a rickety old wooden dock. Okay, first of all, what is rickety? Rickety. You probably never heard of that word. Rickety means 不结实. It means it's almost ready to fall apart or fall down. It means that it's not very strong. Okay, and old wooden, of course, wood, made out of wood, and dock, 码头, okay? So a rickety old wooden dock is an old motto that's been around for a long time, and you have to be very, very careful because it may even be dangerous. So things like this can be dangerous. Along the river's edge, 就是在河边啊, okay, the river's edge. And what were these group, 一群人, what are they doing? They're waiting for a big boat to pass. Okay, it's not clear whether they expected this boat to pass or they are waiting for a big boat, any big boat to pass. Okay, so moving on to the next. They weren't there because they wanted to get on the boat, for it almost never stopped at this little town. Okay, so the people were there not because 并不是因为他们要上船啊. They were not there because they wanted to get on the boat, 上船. For it almost 几乎不停在这个小镇，小小的这个城市 okay? It almost never, 几乎没有 okay? 几乎没有 okay? Stopped at this little town. Okay, going on. Why were they standing there? I mean, that would be the question. Excuse me, if you aren't going to go onto the boat, then why are you standing there just waiting to watch the boat? Yes, they just liked to see the majestic steamer. Okay, what is majestic steamer? Majestic gives the idea of big, beautiful, it's just to majesty, almost like a kingly. You could even almost say kingly. So this was a big boat. Obviously, they were looking for big boats. This is going probably on, what river would you say? The Mississippi River? Okay, this is the Mississippi River. How do you spell that, Mrs. Ash? Maybe you better not spell it. Mississippi. Did I right? Woo! I remember as a kid, we had to say that. Okay, so along the Mississippi River in the south of the United States. Mississippi goes from south to north quite a bit. Anyway, majestic, kingly, big, beautiful steamer. Okay, this is a steam boat. A steamer is just a steam boat, but this is the short way of saying glide down the river. Glide is 滑下去 down the river. So it must be up. The way it's written here, the boat is coming down the river. Okay, going the same direction that the river is going. Okay, and now we come to a point. How are we going to explain a paddle wheel? Okay, a paddle. In those days, they did not have propellers. They got, how do you say, 螺旋桨 or something like that. They didn't have those. They had these big round things on the side, and paddle wheels. And the paddle wheels, when it went around, it grabbed the water and pushed you forward. Okay? So this was a giant paddle wheels. Okay? On each side of the boat, I think. Okay? Churning up the water. Churning up. 打那个水. Okay? Churning up the water on either side of the boat. 那个船呢，两边都有 the big paddle wheels, and these paddle wheels were churning. Obviously, this is a long time ago. 很久很久以前的事. Okay, moving on. And the clanking sound of the engine's pistons. Now, if you have a motor, you have pistons, 活塞. I remember I had to teach, okay, but now we got to have a clanking sound. So I brought my clank. Okay, what is a clanking sound? Clanking sound. So it goes something like this. And you can, the motor is going around and around. I mean, the wheel is going around and around, and you hear the sound. So there you have the clanking sound. So you got the wheels going around, and you have the pistons moving, and the clanking sounds. 这个 clanking 的声音呢. And of course, black smoke that belched. Belched. 冒出来. Okay. From, black smoke. Okay. 的烟囱啊. 烟囱. Black smoke. 黑烟. That 冒出来. Okay. Out of the smoke stacks. What is the smoke stacks? 这个烟囱. That's what you said? Yeah. Must be like that. Okay. On either side of the boat. So 有两个. So it must have been pretty good. Actually, the picture that I showed at the first has the black smoke. 这个黑烟很厉害. Why? Because in those days, they used 煤炭, coal, and it was black, made kind of messy, actually. Okay, moving on. How are we doing for time? Presently, you could say suddenly here. Presently, a little boy came running out onto the dock. 跑到这个码头上面. Going on. He forced his way through the group. 所以有一群人，他是挤过去. He forced his, 走开. So he's forcing his way through the group. And he stood on the leading edge of the tiny wharf. Tiny 就是小小的码头. Okay, leading edge. What is 这个码头边边. Okay, 这个边边. So if you're on the leading edge, you're right on the edge. Just right there on the edge. One more step. 再来一步就到水里面. Okay, so that's the leading. So here he is standing on the leading edge of the tiny wharf. Wharf also is 码头. Wharf, dock, all these are 码头. Okay, going on. Everybody smiled at his childish ways. Okay, everybody smiled. 他们都有笑容 at his childish ways. Now, childish ways 的行为 okay? Childish 是很幼稚的 childish 很幼稚的行为. This one, they noticed that he carried a little red flag. Okay, he's got a little red flag. Okay, and that little red flag is what? Well, they didn't know what it was. 小红的旗子 旗子 okay? And they wondered what that was all about. 他们就想，到底这个是干什么的 Going on. As the steamboat came around the bend, okay, come around, you know, the river doesn't go straight. No river goes straight. It has bends, 歪来歪去, okay? So a bend in the river is the place where the river goes around a corner. It's a corner. So as the steamboat is coming around the corner, its bow. Do you know what a bow is? In this case, this is bow, not bow, bow. Bow is the front end of a boat. 船头, that's a bow, okay? Pointing directly at the group. 这个, okay, pointing 直接向着 the group. 那个小群人在码头上的那些人 okay? The little boy started to wave his flag furiously. 把这个红旗子他就摇来摇去 Going on. A skeptical man, 满怀疑的这个大人，肯定是一个大人 standing on one end of the dock, 站在这个码头一边 laughed at the lad, 就笑他 laughed at the lad is little boy. That's a way of saying little boy, lad. Okay, I think that's British. Okay, going on. Surely you don't expect a big boat like that to stop at this place for a little child like you. 肯定你不会想这个大船 like this or that boat 会停在这个地方，就是为了你啊，不可能啊。No, it would never happen. A little child like you. Going on. The boy replied with confidence. With confidence. He is confident. He knows what he's talking about. He feels very sure about this. And he replied with confidence, I know it will. It always stops for me. 每一次，因为我会停下来。Okay, going on. Suddenly, the big boat slowed down. Its pace. Okay, pace is an interesting thing. 速度. Okay, we could say speed. That's okay. In this case, speed and pace are the same thing. It slowed down its pace. 它的速度开始慢下来 and began to turn toward the dock, toward the shore. Shore 就是这个河边岸边 okay? So it began to turn toward the shore. Going on. The people said, Oh, at the sight, 这个异幕, when they saw the boat, their response was, a response of surprise and wonder. Before long, the riverboat, that means the steamboat, it's a boat that spent its time on the river, not on the ocean, the riverboat. There's another way of saying the boat on the river. The riverboat pulled alongside the dock. In this case, pull means to 拉. But in this case, to pull alongside 的意思是要靠这个小小的码头，靠边，靠那个码头。Going on. One of the sailors, what sailor is? What is a sailor? A sailor is a 船员. Okay, got that? 船员 lowered the gangplank. Gangplank. I'm having trouble with my English today. Maybe I need to have you teach the rest of the class, Mrs. Ash. Okay, gangplank, 踏板. Just like that. Okay, so that its free end rested on the dock. Free end means that the end not on the boat, okay, rested 就下在这个码头上. At this point, Mrs. Ash, I think we'll get you to come up here. So, now, okay, go ahead and read the next one here. Back up a little bit there.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. As the little fellow.
Okay. As the little fellow walked up the gangplank to go on board, he stopped and turned around.
Okay. What is a little fellow?
As a boy, a little boy.
A little boy.
Yeah.
That's another way of saying the little boy. Okay. And he went up the 踏板. Okay. 踏板 is the gangplank. Okay. Gangplank. Maybe we come back here and we'll talk about walking the gangplank. Remember, that's a different term, but it uses the same word. But we won't go into that for a minute here. Okay, so then as he was walking up there, what did he do?
He turned around.
Okay,
Yeah.
he turned around and he spoke to the surprised man. 满惊讶的那个人, okay? The surprised man and said,
I knew this boat would stop for me because the captain is my daddy.
okay, I knew this boat would stop for me because the captain is my daddy. 我知道这个船会停下来，停在这个地方，因为船长是我的爸爸。Okay, now, passing steamboat. So, what lesson can you learn from this? Sometimes little children are right.
Yes,
And
in this case.
In this case, the little child knew and was aware that the captain was his father and that the boat would stop there.
Yes.
So, any other lessons that you can learn? So maybe sometimes we can learn from children, lessons from children.
Oh, I think so.
Have you ever learned a lesson from your children? And maybe that's why your hair has turned white. Because you learned too many. 从小孩子们得到教训. Yeah, it's possible. Can you think of one? Can't think of one right at the
I
moment.
can't think of anything exactly that.
Okay. No,
but
but
actually, sometimes I noticed that they were very honest, and sometimes I was not quite as honest as they were.
okay, so
Yeah.
well, actually, isn't that true? Sometimes children just tell things the way it is.
Oh, yes.
And it's very embarrassing. Trust me, it's very embarrassing, especially when when guests come to your house and the little child who says, "Oh, well, mommy did," oops, don't say anything, But the children, they don't think about these things. They just say, "Well, isn't this true?"
Yes.
I say, we have a degree of, reticence. We're careful. Every word we say is measured. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. We want to say the right thing at the right time. And guess what? Children, they just tell the truth the way it is.
That's right.
And maybe there is a lesson to be learned from that.
Absolutely.
Maybe sometimes we need to be a little more honest with the things that we say. So now, we've run out of time, but guess what? You could write an email to us. You could look at our website, and you can look at actually a lot of our other programs too. For instance, let's take a look. Our email address is the old principal, P-A-L, principal at gmail.com. That's our email. And then if you want to go to our website, it's theoldprinciple.org, www.theoldprinciple.org. So with that, we're going to say goodbye, and we've enjoyed spending time with you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Bye-bye.